At around 9:30 p.m. on Friday the 3rd of December 1926, Agatha Christie climbed the stairs of the home she shared with Archie, her husband of 11 years, and their 7-year-old daughter Rosalind, kissed the sleeping Rosalind goodnight, packed a small suitcase, and left the Sunningdale, Berkshire property in her car, a green Morris Cowley. The next morning, the car was discovered roughly 22 kilometres or 14 miles away, abandoned at Newlands Corner near Guildford in Surrey on the edge of a chalk pit. The car contained only Agatha's fur coat, the small suitcase she had packed, and an expired driver's licence belonging to the novelist. Agatha herself was nowhere to be found. So begins what remains a mystery as compelling as any Christie penned. Where was she? And how does the world's most famous author simply disappear? Hi, I'm your host, Rachel Vine. Welcome to Likely Stories, a storytelling podcast where we unearth the weird, wild, and sometimes unbelievable true stories that shape the world of books and the people who write them. Along the way, we'll uncover writing tips, craft insights, and encouragement to help you grow your manuscript from seed to full bloom. So settle in, sip your tea, and join me as we dig into another likely story. Hi, I'm Rachel, your host and the founder of Wildflower Editorial. Welcome to Likely Stories. Today's story is perhaps my favourite literary mystery, the strange disappearance of renowned crime author Dame Agatha Christie. But before we dive into that mystery, let's begin with our first segment, In Their Own Words. Today we're talking about the words of Dame Agatha Christie, one of the most prolific and celebrated authors of all time, who once said, "The best time for planning a book is while you're doing the dishes." It's such a simple idea, but it says so much about creativity and where inspiration actually comes from. We often imagine creativity as this big, magical thing that only happens under perfect conditions. A quiet room, a tidy desk, a steaming cup of coffee nearby. But for most writers, that's not how it works. Creativity often strikes in the most ordinary, even boring moments, like doing the dishes or folding laundry, walking the dog, or just staring out the window while waiting for the kettle to boil. Think about your own shower thoughts, those sudden flashes of inspiration that seem to come out of nowhere. It turns out writing doesn't always happen at the desk. Sometimes the best ideas come when your hands are busy and your mind is free. As Stephen King says in On Writing, let the boys in the basement do the work. The real creative engine isn't always your conscious logical mind, it's the part of your brain that's always working in the background. Stephen describes writing as a 2-level operation. The upstairs office where you sit down to do the work, and the basement where all the deep, raw creative stuff gets churned out when you're not even paying attention. So when you're doing something mundane like washing dishes, folding towels, walking or driving, you're giving the boys in the basement a chance to work things out without interference. You're getting out of your own way. And often, when you return to the page, the solution is just there. It feels like it came out of nowhere, but really, the boys in the basement had your back. When your conscious mind takes a break, your subconscious keeps going. That's the power of idle time. Simple, repetitive tasks give your brain the space to wander. And when your brain wanders, it makes connections you didn't even know were waiting to be made. Studies show that when we engage in low-effort, routine activities, something called the default mode network in the brain lights up. That's the part of your brain responsible for creative thinking, problem-solving, and reflection. So while you're scrubbing a pan or wiping down a counter, your brain might be quietly solving plot problems, developing characters, or generating new story ideas. And there's no pressure to be creative while you're doing the dishes, which helps. You're not staring at a blank page trying to force something to happen. You're just existing. And in that relaxed state, ideas flow more freely. It's a great reminder not all writing happens in front of a keyboard. In fact, some of the best writing happens away from it. And this isn't just a theory, it shows up in real stories from well-known authors. In her book Big Magic, a book well worth the read if you're interested in this topic, Elizabeth Gilbert tells an amazing story about the poet Ruth Stone that perfectly captures this. Ruth said that when she was growing up in rural Virginia, working in the fields, she could actually feel poems coming towards her, like a kind of thunder rolling across the landscape. When she felt one coming, she would drop her tools and run, sprinting for the house, trying to grab a pencil and paper in time to catch the poem before it passed through her. Sometimes she'd catch it just in time. Other times it would be gone before she could get there. And once she said she caught a poem by the tail, pulling it back into her body word by word in reverse order. It's a wild story, but it beautifully illustrates the fleeting nature of inspiration. It doesn't always come when you're sitting at your desk staring at the screen. More often, it shows up when you're relaxed, distracted, or simply open. And that's why those everyday idle moments matter. The dishes, the shower, the afternoon walk, that's where ideas sneak in. That's when the boys in the basement send something up. And if we're paying attention, we can catch it. What looks like non-doing is actually a moment of deep mental activity. And I think it's worth saying, in a culture that pushes constant productivity, that daydreaming isn't lazy, letting your mind drift isn't a waste of time. Instead, they can be creative fuel. In fact, there's even a name for this process, the incubation effect, where you focus deeply on a problem, then step away and do something unrelated, allowing the unconscious mind to continue processing ideas, leading to fresh insight and creative breakthroughs when you return to the work. Sometimes your best writing move is to walk away from the writing. And here's another angle to think about. For some writers, chores and routines actually become a kind of ritual. The act of washing dishes, making tea, going for a walk, those things can serve as mental cues, quiet signals that say, okay, time to let the ideas start flowing. Over time, those small actions can become a part of your creative process, not a break from it. So, how do we use all this in our own writing lives? Well, first, keep a notebook nearby or use the voice recorder app on your phone. That way, when an idea hits you mid-chore or mid-shower, you don't lose it. You can even lean into this on purpose. The next time you're stuck on a plot point or trying to work out a tricky scene, don't just sit there banging your head against the page. Get up, wash the dishes, walk the dog, vacuum your living room. Turn these routine tasks into intentional brainstorming sessions. You don't have to force it, just attend to the task and notice when ideas pop up and have a way to catch them before they float off. Here's the bigger takeaway. If you're not writing every second, that's okay. Don't guilt yourself. Don't measure progress only by word count or hours spent at your desk. Sometimes the most valuable parts of writing happen when you're doing something completely unrelated. Trust the process even when it's quiet. Let your ideas simmer in the background. Agatha Christie planned entire murder mysteries, perhaps while doing the dishes. And if it worked for her, it can definitely work for the rest of us. So now, on to our likely story. To understand more about the strange case of the disappearance of Agatha Christie, you need to know more about Agatha and the circumstances that befell her in 1926. Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller was born on the 15th of September 1890 in Torquay and grew up there at Ashfield, the family home, the youngest of 3 children born to Frederick and Clara Miller. Agatha's father, Frederick, passed away when she was 11 years old, an event Agatha referred to as the death of her childhood. By this point, her siblings had already left home, leaving Agatha alone with her mother, whom she spent at least some of her younger years caring for due to Clara's ill health. As a result, Agatha was incredibly close to her mother. In October 1912, at the age of 21, Agatha was introduced to Archibald Christie at a dance, and 3 months later she accepted his proposal. They wed on Christmas Eve 1914 while Archie was home on leave from his World War I military posting in France. During the war, Agatha worked as a volunteer nurse for the Red Cross and later qualified as an apothecary assistant. During this time, she wrote her novel and the debut of Hercule Poirot, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. The manuscript was rejected multiple times before being accepted for publication by the Bodley Head. Agatha signed a 5-book contract, which she later called exploitative, and her debut novel was finally published in October 1920, just after Agatha's 30th birthday. By this stage, Agatha had settled into post-war life with her family in London. Her daughter Rosalind was born on the 5th of August 1919 at Ashfield, Clara's home in Torquay, and Archie left the military to take up a job in finance. In 1922, Archie was offered the role of financial advisor for the British Empire Exhibition Tour to promote the upcoming colonial exhibit intended to strengthen bonds within the empire and shore up the position of Britain as a contender on the world stage. Agatha and Archie left 2-year-old Rosalind with her grandmother Clara and spent the next 10 months touring the Commonwealth, including Hawaii, South Africa, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. After the tour was completed in December 1922, Archie became a member of the Sunningdale Golf Club, an obsession Agatha described as taking the game so seriously now that it might have been a religion. The family moved to the area in 1924. They first rented an upstairs apartment at Scotswood Sunningdale for 2 years but found it too small. During this time, Agatha continued to write and in June 1925 published her 5th novel and the last with the Bodley head, entitled The Secret of Chimneys. After signing a new publishing contract with William Collins and a £500 advance for serial rights to her 4th novel, The Man in the Brown Suit, that paid for the Morris Cowley car, the family purchased a 12-bedroom, 3-bathroom home on Charters Road. The house had been on the market for some time due to its reputation for being an unlucky house, so the family were able to purchase it for a smaller sum. They named it Styles after Styles Court, the mansion that featured in Agatha's first novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. And then 1926 came along. 1926 wasn't a particularly huge year on the world stage. John Logie Baird conducted the first public demonstration of television. The coal miners' general strike brought England to a standstill. David Attenborough and Marilyn Monroe were born, and Harry Houdini died. But it was a huge year for Agatha Christie. By 1926, Agatha was a 35-year-old wife of an increasingly absent husband. Archie was often golfing. The mother of a 6-year-old girl, and a household name. She had published 5 novels, a short fiction collection called Poirot Investigates, and a poetry collection called The Road of Dreams. On the 5th of April 1926, Clara, Agatha's beloved mother, passed away due to bronchitis after a time of illness, sending Agatha into a deep depression due possibly in part to a lack of support from her husband Archie. At the time of Clara's illness, Archie, who hated illness, death and trouble, as Agatha put it, was away again, this time in Spain. And on Clara's death, he promptly escaped to London, not even attending the funeral of his late mother-in-law. Agatha was under immense emotional and physical strain as she moved to Ashfield, the family home in Torquay, for several months in 1926 to sort through and pack up her mother's belongings alone. She later described it as a period of loneliness where she started having feelings of confusion and the first glimpses of a mental breakdown. She received some relief in June 1926 when the 3rd of her Hercule Poirot novels and the first novel with her new publisher, William Collins and Sons, was published to great critical acclaim. The murder of Roger Ackroyd catapulted Agatha into literary stardom. The British Crime Writers Association would, in 2013, go on to vote it the best crime novel ever written, and the literary conventions that Agatha used in the novel forever impacted the genre. Agatha was able to return home to Styles but was hit again with a shock. In August 1926, Archie admitted to Agatha that he was having an affair and had fallen in love with another, younger woman, family friend Nancy Neal. He asked Agatha for a divorce, which she refused. The couple separated for a short time and then attempted a trial reconciliation, which Agatha later described as a time of sorrow, misery, and heartbreak, and a mistake. And this brings us up to that fateful night. On Friday the 3rd of December, Archie and Agatha had another argument, and Archie told Agatha he was leaving for good. He, along with his mistress Nancy, had been invited to Hurtmore Cottage in Godalming for the weekend by Nancy's friends Madge and Frank James. Archie packed his belongings and left. Agatha returned home to find her husband gone, and later that evening at approximately 9:45 p.m, she got in her car, a green Morris Carly, and left Styles herself. Her car was next seen by a passerby, Jack Best, early the next morning while he was out walking his dog not far from Silent Pool on a grassy embankment at Newlands Corner, about 10 kilometres or 6 miles from where Archie was staying with his mistress, with its rear wheels in the air, the driver's door open and lights still on. The police reported that the car was found in such a position as to indicate that some unusual proceeding had taken place. The car being found halfway down a grassy slope well off the main road with its bonnet buried in some bushes, as if it had gone out of control. In the car was found a fur coat, a dressing case containing various articles of ladies' wearing apparel, and a driving licence indicating that the owner was Mrs. Agatha Christie of Sunningdale, Berkshire. The incident had made the front page of the New York Times by the following Monday, which reported, "The novelist's car was found abandoned near Guildford on the edge of a chalk pit, the front wheels actually overhanging the edge. The car evidently had run away and only a thick hedge growth prevented it from plunging into the pit." The police immediately assumed the worst and an investigation began into the strange disappearance. It was a perfect tabloid story, a whodunit starring the celebrity author most famous for penning them, and it was widely reported in the media. Archie was immediately a suspect to both the police and the media, and as thousands of police volunteers across 4 counties, scouts, bloodhounds, planes and divers searched for Agatha, the rumours swirled. Some said that Agatha had drowned herself at the nearby Silent Pool, a spring-sourced lake. Local folklore talks of a woodcutter's daughter who was abducted and forced to drown herself in the pool, and whose ghost appears at midnight luring others to their own watery demise. Locals considered the pool to be haunted, and it had been linked to many spooky and mysterious events. Agatha's car had been discovered just 2 kilometres or 1.3 miles away. Some said that Archie had murdered her or that she was attempting to frame her hapless, philandering husband for the crime, while others suggested it was nothing more than a publicity stunt to promote her latest novel. On Wednesday, the 8th of December, after 3 full days of searching, Archie's brother, Campbell Christie, said he had received a letter from Agatha stating that she was going to a Yorkshire spa for rest and recovery. Unconvinced by this, the police expanded their search. They brought Agatha's dog to the scene of her disappearance to see if it would follow a scent trail to its owner. Unfortunately, it only whined. At times, the case took on a spooky lean. It was claimed by some that Agatha had been spooked by her house, which stands in a lonely lane unlit at night, which has a reputation of being haunted. The lane has been the scene of a murder of a woman and the suicide of a man. Friends reported that Agatha had said, "If I do not leave Sunningdale soon, Sunningdale will be the end of me." Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes series, became involved in the case and took one of Agatha's gloves to a celebrated medium, believing that the novelist could be located via paranormal means. Dorothy Sayre, the author of the Lord Peter Wimsey crime novels, was also called in to help look for clues. Neither was successful in furthering the case, and nor were the party of spiritualists who held a séance in the bushes where Agatha's car had been discovered. The Home Secretary, William Joynson Hicks, pressured police, urging them to find Agatha quicker, and a newspaper offered a £100 reward for information that led to her discovery. On Saturday, the 11th of December, a full week after she had been declared missing, the public was excited to hear that before leaving home, Agatha had written 3 letters. The first was to her secretary. This letter contained the line, "I must get away. I cannot stay here in Sunningdale much longer." The second letter was to Agatha's brother-in-law, Campbell Christie, and the third was to Archie himself. Archie refused to disclose what was in his letter, and both the second and third letters were destroyed before police could take them into evidence. However, all 3 letters were said to not give any information that could point to where Agatha had gone. By this point, there were 3 main theories. 1, that Agatha had been murdered, most likely by Archie. 2, that Agatha had died by suicide, drowning in the silent pool that locals claimed was bottomless. And 3, that Agatha had deliberately disappeared. In just 1 week, around 15,000 people had taken part in the search for Agatha, plus 6 trained bloodhounds, a crate-load of Airedale Terriers, many retrievers, an Alsatian police dog, and the services of common mongrels. And it was the first time that planes were used in a missing persons case in England. The police speculated that if Agatha was in fact still alive, she had most likely absconded to London disguised as a man, while the tabloids circulated the rumour that Agatha had left behind a sealed envelope to be opened only in the case of her body being discovered. But either way, the view was that Agatha Christie had no intention of returning when she had left Styles a week before. Looking for an editor or story coach for your children's or youth manuscript? Whether you're writing picture books, middle grade, young adult, or new adult fiction, Rachel at Wildflower Editorial can help your story bloom. With university-level qualifications, professional endorsements, years of experience, and a 5-star rating on Facebook, you're in expert hands. To find out more, visit wildflowereditorial.com.au or find me on Instagram and Facebook at Wildflower Editorial. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Wildflower Editorial, where stories blossom. On Tuesday, the 14th of December, banjo player Bob Tappan reported a guest at the Yorkshire spa his band played at who looked exactly like Agatha Christie. Police rushed to the Hydropathic Hotel in Harrogate, over 350 kilometres or 200 miles away from where Agatha's car had been discovered. According to spa staff, Agatha had arrived via taxi on the 4th of December with no suitcase. She checked in with an accent under the name Mrs. Teresa Neal, explaining that she had just arrived from her home in Cape Town, South Africa, and had left her luggage with friends. Many have since noted that it is rather suspicious that she was using the surname of Archie's mistress, guaranteeing that it would at some point enter the media, and some have even suggested that Teresa is an anagram of teaser. While at the spa, Agatha was seen dancing the Charleston, playing bridge, doing crosswords and reading the newspaper, spending up big due to a money belt stuffed with cash that she had luckily been wearing on her person during her car accident. When the police arrived, they were told that Agatha was suffering from memory loss and could give no account of the preceding 11 days, nor any reason for her actions. The police brought Archie to the spa to give a positive identification, where Agatha was said to meet him with a stony stare before identifying him as her brother. They returned to Styles together. The next day, Agatha left for her sister's residence at Abney Hall, Cheadle, where she was sequestered in guarded hall, gates locked, telephone cut off and callers turned away. Archie responded to all inquiries about his wife's state of mind, saying she was suffering from a nervous disorder and memory loss. This was corroborated by 2 doctors. Soon after, Archie himself left Styles for good. Coincidentally, or maybe not, the incident did impact Agatha's 6th novel, The Big Four, published just a few weeks later in January 1927, as it went on to become her largest sale hit at the time, easily doubling the success of her previous novel, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, despite it being, in her own words, a rotten book. Just 15 months later, Agatha sued Archie for divorce in March 1928 and took full custody of their daughter Rosalind, who was by then 10 years old. Agatha said this about the entire episode. So, after illness came sorrow, despair, and heartbreak. There is no need to dwell on it. I stood out for a year hoping he would change, but he did not. So ended my first married life. Agatha and Archie were formally divorced in April of 1928, and before the year was out, Archie had married his mistress, Nancy Neal, in a ceremony at St. George's, Hanover Square. Agatha eventually returned to herself and penned another 60 novels. She went on to become the best-selling novelist of all time. She is said to have sold more than 1 billion books in England and 1 billion more internationally, and her books are outsold only by Shakespeare's plays and the Bible. Agatha rarely spoke of the event, even with friends. The only explanation she ever offered publicly was in a 1928 interview with the Daily Mail, where she claimed to have bumped her head before wandering to the Yorkshire Spa. Christie's autobiography, published posthumously in 1977, makes no reference to the disappearance at all. Oh, and one further part of the mystery. Despite the novelist's disappearance being widely documented in both writing and photograph, information on her car, the famous green Morris Cowley, is almost non-existent. There are no published photos of the car, no documents, no registration number listed. There are no details on what happened to the car after it was abandoned by Agatha in December 1926. Now, almost 100 years later, the mystery continues. Biographers disagree, and we will never know the full truth behind Agatha Christie's mysterious 11-day disappearance. But what do you think? Was Agatha suffering from memory loss after a car crash? Did she enter a fugue state after concussing herself, call a taxi and travel 350 kilometres or 200 miles, luckily coming across the Hydropathic Hotel in Harrogate? Or did she plan the whole thing just to ruin her husband's plans of spending the weekend with his mistress, embarrassing both Archie and Nancy Neal in the media in the process? Was she gone girl long before the scheming anti-hero Amy Dunn, complete with money belt? Or was she simply a woman overcome with depression? As you form your own conclusions about the disappearance of Agatha Christie, you may be interested in exploring the many fictional retellings of the case, which include A Talent for Murder by Andrew Wilson, The Mystery of Mrs. Christie by Marie Benedict, or The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont. Well, that's it for this chapter of Likely Stories. Thanks for listening along. You can check the show notes for links to the books and references mentioned in today's episode. And if you liked this episode, be sure to let us know and join me next time for another Likely Story. To make sure you never miss an episode, hit subscribe, share this episode with your bookish and writerly friends, follow the podcast on Instagram at Likely Stories Podcast, or follow me, Rachel Vine, on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube at RachelVine13. You can learn more about me, the podcast, and explore a growing library of free resources for writers at wildflowereditorial.com.au.